What's up, everybody? This is Warhawk Beyond 2040 in the house, bringing to you another edition of the Batwoman review series of Season 1. And this week's episode was entitled Tell Me the Truth, which I just finished watching a few minutes ago. And I have to say, it was really good. I really enjoyed this week's episode a lot. There was plenty of Batwoman action to go around. And yeah, it was really good. I enjoyed it a lot. Was a little bit on the romance side, but not too much. But plenty of action and plenty of good dialogue to go around. And yeah, overall, good stuff. This week's episode we saw the debut of Alfred's daughter, Julia Pennyworth. And the only thing I had an issue with the Julia Pennyworth character was the English accent. It kind of felt typical British stereotype. It felt a little bit forced, but the acting chops made up for it. So I like Julia Pennyworth. I think she'll be a good asset to the Batwoman team. Maybe we might see her in a few more episodes down the road. I'm hoping we do. Julia Pennyworth played quite a big role in this episode, which I'm going to get into momentarily. We also learned in this episode the real reason why Sophie and Kate's relationship ended, which we saw way back in the first episode. So we got to see some more flashbacks about what really happened and why Kate was kicked out of the military. This week's episode, we saw a villain named The Rifle, and he goes around targeting different businessmen. He kind of reminded me a lot of Deadshot from the Batman comics in terms of standing there on rooftops or being hidden in the shadows and taking out his targets. So we kind of got a bit of a Deadshot type of villain for this week's episode. One of my favourite moments in this episode, especially at the beginning, when the Rifle was about to take out his target, we see him strung up, upside down. And it kind of reminded me of the Batman Arkham games, where Batman would lurk in the shadows, pick his target, and then strung him up with his rope and just leave him hanging upside down. So that was kind of a nice little shout out to the games. And as you see, this Rifle's trying to shoot whoever it was that hung him up. You see Batwoman just quickly disappear into the shadows. So that was a very Bat-esque type of moment, and I thought that was a really nice touch. And this was only at the beginning of the episode, so I really enjoyed that a lot. We then see the Crows arrive on the scene, being led by Sophie, and as they secure the building, Batwoman walks away, and Sophie calls out Kate and lets her know that she knows that Batwoman is really Kate, and she says to her that Jacob needs to know, and if you're not going to tell him, then I will. And Batwoman says to her that, do you trust me? And says, I will come and find you. And she disappears. And her husband Tyler arrives and says, what did she say to you? And she said nothing. So it looks like Sophie knows that Batwoman is Kate Kane. But obviously Batwoman is not going to confirm that. And she's not going to confirm that as Kate Kane either. So she's hot on the trail already. And we're only in the 7th episode into this season. So it's kind of cool to see Sophie's trying to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. But I do strongly believe she will actually find out who Batwoman is by the season finale. Or maybe even a couple of episodes before, as I've said in previous videos. So she's hot on the trail. So she ain't letting up for anybody. Meanwhile, inside the restaurant, which is called El Serendo, we see a blonde woman with a British accent report that the Rifle has made his way to Gotham, and we later learn that the blonde woman is none other than Julia Pennyworth. And that's right, everyone. For those of you who don't know that last name, Julia Pennyworth is the daughter of none other than Bruce Wayne's butler himself, Alfred Pennyworth. So it's kind of cool we're getting a bit of the Pennyworth side into this show already. And anyone who knows who Julia Pennyworth is, Julia Pennyworth was a big part of the comics, and she obviously looks completely different in terms of skin colour and stuff, but I thought the way they portrayed her in this episode was pretty cool. The only issue I had with Christina Wolf's performance as Julia Pennyworth was the accent. I felt it was very stereotyped of the British accent, and it kind of felt a little bit forced, but her acting chops and her performance made up for it. But there were just certain scenes that the accent rubbed me up the wrong way, but not too much. But hopefully they'll work on it as this season progresses. But other than that, I thought she was a good character, and as I said, I look forward to seeing more of her as we go along here. The next day on news, we see the restaurant owner say that without this city having a hero, their doors would have been closed and they would have been out of business. And he also says that, Batwoman, if you're seeing this, you're welcome in my restaurant anytime for a free meal. So it's kind of good that Gotham is starting to slowly come round to the idea of a Batwoman protecting them. And it's really good to see that they're already starting to embrace Batwoman and showing her respect. So it's kind of cool, really. And it's not every day a restaurant says to a hero, hey, you're welcome for a free meal in my place anytime. So that was kind of nice to see that. So it's good to see that she's already building up a good rapport with the citizens of Gotham. So I look forward to seeing more things like that in the near future. Meanwhile, in the Batcave, we see Katie's shadow sparring, and Luke comes out and says that, I've learned that Jacob is going to be divorcing Catherine, your stepmother. Are you okay with that? And Kate says that, I'm not going to lose sleep over the fact that Catherine preyed on my dad's grief and thinking that I was crazy for saying that Beth was still alive. And Luke says, well, I didn't get any sleep either, as I've been spending most of my nights trying to compile a list of who was at the restaurants, and the last two victims that were murdered both worked for Catherine's company. Now, one of the other dinner guests, it turns out, works for Pyroelectrics, which makes Derek Holcomb the next target. Kate also says to Luke that Sophie knows that I'm Batwoman and she's going to tell my dad about me, and as a result of that, that could lead to him shutting us down for good. And Luke asks, can you trust Sophie? And Kate says, I used to trust her, but I'm not too sure now. And Luke says to her, well, if you trust her, then you've got to convince her not to tell your dad that you're Batwoman, because if she does, then he is going to shut us down for good. And if we're shut down for good, then Batwoman won't be able to protect Gotham. So it's kind of good to see that she's trying to learn how to juggle her identity while agonising over how Bruce Wayne did it for so many years as Batman. So, as I said already, Kate is still trying to learn her way around and find her own feet in the Bat persona while trying to juggle a double life. So I think as the show will go along, she will get better at it, but at the moment she's still in the early phases of trying to figure out the whole dual identity, so to speak. Sophie's husband, on the other hand, suspects that Sophie is hiding the truth about who Batwoman really is, and he pulls up some CCTV footage of the night when the Crows try to stop the rifle, and he asks her that, do you know who Batwoman is? And she says, no, I don't. And he asks her, well, you said that she didn't say a word to you, so what was you doing with her? Sophie says to Tyler that, I was just telling her to surrender, nothing more. And I don't actually know who she is, but Tyler is already under the impression that Sophie does know and that she's lying. So there's kind of some planted seeds of them possibly distrusting each other, but we'll see how that plays along. But hopefully they won't drag that out for too long, and hopefully Sophie will learn that Batwoman is really Kate Kane, maybe before the season finale, or maybe a couple of episodes before, as I've mentioned earlier. Then shortly after, we see Mary and Catherine in the limo, where Mary learns that Jacob and Catherine are going to be divorced, and she's really upset about how everyone has turned their back on her, all because of her lies. So maybe we might see Mary be a part of the Batwoman team. I mean, she has helped Batwoman out for the last few episodes, so maybe that might happen later on in the season. And we also learn that Catherine gets a text saying that the coil accelerator, which was mentioned, I think, the last episode, that this weapon can actually penetrate Batwoman's suit, and it's gone missing. So we learn also that Holcomb works at this lab with Catherine at Hamilton Labs, and that he's the next target, as I've said already. She also learns that Dean Virurox was killed. Batwoman then arrives at the next target of the rifle, and we see a mystery woman attack him and says to her that I'll be taking the rifle in, and then the two of them go at it, and Batwoman takes off this mystery woman's mask, and it's none other than Julia Pennyworth, who confirms that she knows that Batwoman is Kate by saying to her, I know it's you, Kate, because I taught you that strike. So that was quite funny that someone just, other than Sophie, knows who Batwoman really is. So that was kind of a funny moment to see them two go at it, and she goes, oh hey Kate, how are you? So I really enjoyed that, so that was quite a lot of fun. We then see Holcomb is stabbed multiple times by the mouse, and Alice steps out and congratulates him for killing Holcomb as requested. We also see that the rifle is actually working for Alice, and the rifle says to her that, look, I've done what you've already asked me to do, I've killed 2 men for you. But Alice, of course, isn't impressed. The rifle then says to Alice that his boss isn't going to give you anything you want until he actually knows the gun works, and Alice uses it as a demonstration by destroying a nearby wall before leaving with Mouse. So it looks like to me that this weapon is going to play a big part later on in the season, and as we learn that this weapon actually can penetrate Batwoman's suit, so maybe this is setting up for a big season finale, or maybe a couple of episodes down the line. But it's really good to see that there's putting a lot of emphasis on this coil accelerator type of weapon. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this weapon is going to be used in later episodes. We also learn that the reason why Julia is in Gotham is because her agency assigned her to capture the rifle 8 months ago, and she's been following the rifle around ever since, trying to get a hold on his location and capture him. And also says to Kate that, congratulations on following Bruce Wayne's footsteps. Maybe you and I could work together again like we used to. And Kate says, no, I think I'll pass. So we learn that they've already have a little bit of history. We even learned they had a bit of a thing going on back in the day. So it's quite funny that we're getting to see more about Kate's past love life. And it's quite hilarious that she had a thing with Alfred's daughter, of all people. We also get a quick flashback with Sophie and Kate, and we kind of learn more about the reasons why they broke up. In the Points Rock Academy, which is kind of like a military sort of program, they disown and hate the idea of homosexuality, and they learn that if they ever found out that cadets were essentially gay, they will be kicked out. So this obviously played a big part in the breakup of Sophie and Kate's relationship back in the past. And Sophie worries about that if she gets found out that she's a lesbian, that her future is going to fall apart before her very eyes. And Kate says, we've been through everything together, we can get through this if we stay together as a couple. And they agree to tell their superiors the truth about their relationship. We also get to see in the flashback how exactly the relationship fell apart between Sophie and Kate. Jacob tells Sophie that do what you have to do, but he warns her that if you sign that letter of denial, you won't be able to graduate. And Sophie says to Jacob that Kate and I are going to stick together no matter what. And Jacob says, look, my daughter is fearless and passionate and reckless. She'll do whatever she wants, and he knows that it will be her last day. But Sophie, on the other hand, says that, but it will destroy our relationship if I lie. And Jacob says, I can't make that decision for you. That's up to you. We also learn that Sophie was handpicked by Jacob to join the Crows, and that she was able to graduate and provide for her family. So the relationship basically ended because Sophie chose graduating over Kate. So it's not really a selfish reason, but it's a decent reason nonetheless. So it's quite interesting to see how exactly everything went down, and to see also that Jacob Kate's father played a part in the relationship ending. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how Kate's going to react to that news when she does learn the truth sometime later on in the season, or maybe a couple of episodes later. So should be very, very explosive to say the least. We then see Sophie meet Batwoman at an apartment to tell her that I told Jacob who you really are to stop you from getting killed, and then Kate walks in, so it's quite obvious that it's someone else dressed up as Batwoman to divert Sophie's suspicions from Kate. And we learn that Batwoman is actually Julia dressed up, and she gets hit by the core accelerator, which results in her getting blasted out the window, and the crows capture her. Kate then takes out the crow men, and Julia asks her, why didn't the gun kill me? And Kate says, I don't know why, but I'm just glad you're okay. We learn the real reason why the weapon didn't work was because Alice secretly removed the power cell from the gun and says that there is nothing she wouldn't do to protect her sister. So even though Alice is still a quote-unquote villain, there's still a bit of good in her that still cares about her sister. So it's quite interesting that she would actually go out of her way to protect her sister. So maybe we're going to see more about that later on in the season and actually learn her reasons for doing that. Julia gets word that the rifle has gone to the Mediterranean and that's where she's headed. And she also tells Kate that Bruce never trusted anyone other than Lucius Fox and Alfred, and the reason why he disappeared for 4 years is because no one cares. And Julia tells Kate that in her opinion that isn't a good thing. Sophie and Kate then meet up, and Sophie says that she told Jacob that she was wrong about Kate being Batwoman, and Kate explains that I met up with you for dinner because I wanted to clear the air. And Sophie says that it isn't fair to Tyler, and Kate says that I think it's best if we keep our distance from each other, which they agreed. And Sophie leaves Kate an open box, which is her marksmanship medal from when they were supposed to graduate together. So the last shot we see is Mouse dressed up as Jacob arrives to meet Alice, and he assures her that they're never going to see it coming. And Alice says that we're going to host the most memorable tea party Gotham has ever seen. So that should be very interesting to see how all of this goes down. So there you have it, guys. That was this week's episode entitled Tell Me the Truth. Overall, I really enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was very, very good. I loved the old classic swapping places routine where we saw Julia dress up as Batwoman to divert suspicion, so that was a lot of fun. And yeah, there was plenty of good action to go around, and I'm really enjoying this season. It's starting to slowly find its groove, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to next week's episode. So I'm going to leave this here for all of you. What did you think of this week's episode? Did you enjoy it? What was your favourite moments? Was there anything you didn't like? Leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I'll see you next time for another edition of the Batwoman review series of Season 1. So till then, take care everybody.